Rebecca Margolis, born in 1896, was one of 9 children born into a Jewish family which lived in Brest-Litovsk, Russia, now on the Polish-Russian border.
As a Jewish child, I don't remember really any problems that we had because we lived among Jewish people only. But if we had lived outside of a Jewish community, we probably would have problems. My father came here in 1899 because he thought it would be a better life for him and his family in the United States. And in 1901, he brought his entire family to America. We came to the United States by ship in steerage with a lot of other immigrants. And because we didn't have enough money, Father didn't have enough money to provide any better accommodations. And it took about 2 weeks to get here. While we were on the ship, we all were sick. And most of the other passengers on the ship in the same conditions we were in were all sick because the accommodations was very, very poor. We all moved to the east side and we adjusted very well.
Howard Schulman, Rebecca's son, fills us in on her early days in America.
There wasn't too much that I heard about her life as a child except the crowded quarters that she lived in when the family settled here. There were 9 children in the family, and I remember them describing the house they lived in on Rivington Street, which had a living room which was smaller than the rug that they had on the floor. As a matter of fact, the building is still standing there, and it is pretty old and run down now. Her life as a child in America, from what I gather, was not influenced by the European background, but only influenced by the Lower East Side background that where she lived.
As I was growing up, we all found America to be a wonderful place to live because it was much easier here than it was in Poland for all of us. I find life in America very, very lovely, and this is my home.
Gertie Sherman was born in 1907 in Leeds, England, where she lived until she was a young adult. Her parents had immigrated to England from a Jewish shtetl near Riga in Lithuania.
As a child, I had very few problems, if any at all. My parents were very enlightened and we lived in a very happy household. It's very difficult for me to remember any problems at all. And my parents had very few problems because they integrated into the English community very easily, although they themselves were immigrants from Russia.
Barbara Schulman, Gertie's daughter, fills us in on some of the details of what life was like for Gertie growing up in England.
Yes, I heard many things my mother would tell me when I was a child about things that happened to her when she was growing up in England. One of the biggest differences I can think of was that Mother attended elementary school, but compulsory education in England did not exist then, perhaps past what is our 8th grade level today. She came from a large family. There were 6 children. She helped her mother at home. She also, from the time she was a young girl, helped her father in his tailoring business. When she got older, she had a job in another tailoring establishment doing sewing, but she also helped her father in his business until he died, and then she continued working in this outside firm. Life in the part of England that my mother grew up in was highly unmechanized. They had no electricity until she was almost a grown woman. They had outside plumbing. They had no conveniences that we think of at home. There was no such thing as a washing machine. The laundry was done in the old-fashioned method of doing the clothes in a tub by hand. Life was uncomplicated because they didn't have all the mechanized interfering conveniences that we have here.
I was married to an American who was working in Paris. We lived there for a couple of years, and in September of 1931, he was recalled to New York by his office, and naturally being his wife and also having a little baby daughter at the time, I came with him to New York and have lived here happily ever since. We went from London to Southampton, where we boarded the SS Leviathan, which at that time was the largest ship afloat on the ocean. It took us about a week to get here. We had a beautiful first-class stateroom and had a wonderful voyage. My biggest thrill was seeing the Statue of Liberty as we entered the New York harbor. I found it very easy to adjust to the American way of life. I found life in America just about as easy as it was for me in England. I have no desire whatsoever to live in England. Life in America has been very good to me, and things in England are not as they used to be years ago. The only time I ever go back there is when I have a wish to visit with my family, which I have 2 sisters and a brother who still lives there.
These are the stories that my grandmothers and my parents passed down to me. What strikes me most is the vast difference in the immigration situations that my 2 grandmothers went through. While Grandma Gertie arrived first class as an adult, Grandma B traveled in steerage. And when she arrived, she and her brothers and sisters and parents all had to pass through Ellis Island. When the island was opened to visitors in the 1970s, before its restoration, Grandma visited it once again. While there, the tour guide asked if anyone had any family members who had passed through. Grandma raised her hand and said, "I passed through. There used to be a staircase over there." She remembered her older brothers playing games, running up and down the stairs. When a uniformed official approached them and asked them to stop, the boys were terrified. In the old country, uniformed officials were bad news. I recently visited the newly restored Ellis Island. The most moving part of my visit was the ferry ride to and from the island. As I stood at the ship railing, watching our approach, I felt as if I were retracing my ancestors' steps, returning to where it all began.